Right, Ambassador Suri, and while it has all the elements to qualify as pulp fiction, but the dystopian reality of it is, of course, very hard to ignore at this point. And as you've mentioned, if regime change is the fundamental goal here, we know that the regime is not going to collapse by, killing the supreme leader and his top military advisors, because we know that Iran's regime is essentially engineered to survive wars and assassinations. And having said that, the chances of seeing a repeat of what we saw in Venezuela would also be perhaps a grave miscalculation on Trump's part, because the 93 million people of Iran accepting a pro-American regime seems unlikely, according to many experts. Ambassador Suri, what are the odds that it won't instead consolidate hardline forces and trigger a survival response perhaps from Iran at this point?
I think you're absolutely right, let me just make 2 or 3 points. One is that the Iranian regime has demonstrated a surprising degree of resilience by virtue of the succession planning that they have done in almost all key parts of government, where number 1 is gone, there's a number 2, number 2 is gone, there's a number 3, and the takeover so far has been quite seamless, particularly with this 3-member leadership council that seems to be running the affairs of the country at this point of time. The second point is that it really is hard to imagine regime change by air power alone. You will probably at some point of time need to bring in boots on the ground. Whose boots is a moot point. Israeli boots, American boots, Kurdish boots. There is a lot of talk about CIA arming the Kurdish minority groups in the border areas and encouraging them to start marching towards Tehran. And none of this takes into account the reality that when you have foreign forces intervening and destroying parts of your country, even elements that were opposed to the regime, and very strongly and for very good reasons they were opposed to the theocratic regime in Tehran, even they might decide that it is the lesser evil as compared to what might be coming down the pike. I think the point I've made in my piece is that having seen the example of Iraq and Syria and other countries next door, the very highly educated people of Iran probably recognize that even a bad government is better than no government because of the chaos that is unleashed and the violence that is unleashed in a no government situation. So right now, I think there are no good options other than President Trump waking up from the right side of the bed tomorrow and declaring a unilateral victory. I don't see any other good options left.
And those are all very valid points and concerns here, but there's also the differing calculus between the US and Israel, which you've again also highlighted in your article, that unlike Americans who are looking to wrap things up in 4 to 5 weeks, out of which 1 week is already up, Israel is quite prepared for a campaign that would last several weeks. Now, what do we make of these, diverging strategic horizons between Washington and Tel Aviv that we're seeing play out?
Look, because we are in this rapidly evolving situation, particularly the evolving thinking in Washington itself, what was true 48 hours back when I was writing the article may not be 100% accurate today as we are having this conversation. And the reason I say that is Israel was very clear. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has made no secret of his aspiration and his ambition to see the end of the theocratic regime in Iran. And there have been learned commentators in Israel saying that Israel is not particularly concerned about scenarios of chaos, of fragmentation, of unrest, and all of that might emerge in the wake of the fall of the regime. The US position initially seemed to be more calibrated, that they were focused on the nuclear deal, but increasingly the words coming out of Washington seem to suggest that there is a greater convergence with the Israeli position and that President Trump is himself coming around to the objective of regime change. And I guess that's why I say that you have this very aggressive tail, which is Israel, wagging the somewhat confounded dog, which is the US.